Hi, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of These Lads Are Mental. Today, we're joined by Nic Brown. He is the CEO of batyr, B-A-T-Y-R, small b, we're told. batyr is a fantastic organization, and Nic himself is a really fun and approachable guy. So we really think you're going to enjoy this episode. A little bit about Nic. In 2015, he began with batyr as a school program manager. He then moved into the national program manager in 2017, and he was promoted to the CEO role in 2019, right at the cusp of when COVID and the lockdown situation happened. So he's really had his hands full over the last couple of years. He spent most of his career in not-for-profits. He sat on advisory committees for a global coalition for youth mental health and on the Integrated Content Technical Advisory Group for the Beyond Blue National Education Initiative. And he currently sits on the Suicide Prevention Australia's Policy Committee. So great guy all around. He's from the mid-north coast in New South Wales. He loves to surf and he's a snowboarder. Some of the batyr mottos that we love are, it gives a voice to the elephant in the room, and they want to smash the stigma around mental health. What a fantastic organization. Their mission is a goal for young people to reach out for positive conversations. So we're absolutely delighted to have Nic on the show. Nic, welcome.
What's happening, mate? How are you? We're back, mate. I don't know how we made it this far. We're doing all right.
They say 3 is the lucky number, right?
Apparently, that's what they say.
Podcast number 3, although being Irish, it's quite difficult saying that word, as you probably know.
What 3?
3.
And me at football, obviously, our gaffer Will used to always stay, we'll play a 4-3-3. And then a few of the lads, with a Greek lad in the team who just absolutely loved it, man.
But it is a bit of a disability, really, because like you can't distinguish between an actual tree, which is like has branches on it, and the number 3. Like, I don't know if you can tell.
But can you see it? What's is it the TH part that throws you off?
Yeah, we can't pronounce our THs, and then when you really try, like I've tried to bring it into my vernacular over the course of the last 10 years. But when you try and, like, I'll show you what I mean here. When I say, I love the number 3, it just sounds very peculiar. It's like I've got a list.
It sounds like a sentence to me, mate. It sounds like a normal sentence.
And I have to pause. I have to go, yeah, I live at 33. Like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, no, nothing.
Sounds like a punch. Just trying to do a punchline. Was that a joke? Why did he pause?
And the other thing, I swear to God, since I've come to Australia, every fucking house I've lived in has had a 3 in it. I lived in 37 Alfred Street in Melbourne. Then it was in Unit 10, 32 Curlew Street. I was Unit 3, 77 Blair Street. I'm like, I was 103 Brighton Boulevard. Literally, there's been a 3 in every address I've had. Bleeding curse.
Just know your address there, mate. Love that.
Well, what's happening? The crystals are back. You'll be delighted.
That's mate. I felt that the last episode. It wasn't as good, mate. I think that's what it was the crystals.
Yeah, the energy.
I felt the aura. The energy wasn't the same. Energy wasn't the same, mate.
Yeah, you got to give me a little kiss. But what's happened? What have you been up to in the last week?
Coaching, mate, a lot of coaching. Weather's been decent, mate, so I've been getting frazzled. My wee Scottish skin's been getting battered. I've got one of those Alcatans, which is like neck here, and then just my t-shirt line just here. It's absolute Alcatan.
Oh, the builder's tan.
The builder's tan, mate, aye. So, nah, mate, it's been actually not bad week, mate. It's been, the weather helps in it. It's been out in the, just try to get out as much as possible. I go to Sydney Park. Sydney Park's like amazing. Sydney Park, there's people boxing, meditating, playing football, rugby, AFL, jogging. There's like young kids, older people. So there's like people doing everything. Whereas sometimes you go to like just a local park and it's just me. It's a bit depressing. But for exercising, it's a good big part to go and do stuff, mate. That's pretty much it, mate. Coaching. What about yourself?
Well, I actually got a tattoo. in the last week, and speaking of the number,
is that a haircut?
No. Well, I did. I cut my own hair actually as well, which is one thing I did do. No, well, I got a tattoo, and where I'm from, in you know how I like a story, but I'm from Dublin, and then I'm from a suburb called Stillorgan. But then in Ireland, I don't know if it's the same in Scotland. Most people live in estates, like, you know, like with 300 houses or whatever.
300.
Yeah, which sounds dodgy, you know. Oh yeah, I'm from the estate, but it's just the way people live mostly in Ireland. And Lakelands means on look on, which is like a lake, Osgailga in Irish. But there's actually no lake there at all. Apparently there was one back in the old days, but I don't know whether I believe that or not. But there's these trees in the park, which is the emblem of the local soccer team. So I ended up getting, I don't know, most people who listen to an audio, so you're not gonna be able to see, but I got a.
What is that?
It's the trees of I can't even. The angles are all weird here. It's
You're a
like
tricep, mate. You're an animal.
I know. Look at that. The gun show.
Absolute guns, mate. Thank God I've got a wide lens on. Unbelievable.
So I've added to my weird collection of tattoos, which now is I've got a clothes hanger, a bike, my granddad's name, and a bunch of trees that I can't even pronounce properly. Well, you and I were chatting about how, you know, we reminisce about the past, and we're both a bit nostalgic. So on this week's episode, we thought we'd actually focus on chocolate. So we tasked each other to go away and come back up with something that means something to us, or whether it's a tea or a coffee or a chocolate. So what have you got for us today, Gary?
I've got a wee Kit Kat chunky.
Oh yeah, upside down.
Upside down Kit Kat. Oh mate, it's Australia. We're in Australia, mate.
Yeah, the toilet flushes the wrong way, doesn't it?
We Kit Kat chunky, mate. These are simple but effective, right? The reason I love Kit Kat, obviously everyone loves a Kit Kat. Let's be honest. But when I used to go to my granny's back in Glasgow, I used to go before every Celtic game. I'm a big Celtic fan, so before every Celtic game, I'd go there with my dad, and she'd always just put literally a big tin out with about 4,000. I think she was sponsored by Nestle. She was like 4,000 Kit Kats, a big tin. I was about 14. I used to be about 13 of them. But it just reminds me of my grand's house, who's sadly now passed. So it just reminds me of her. And then I had a different gear.
Oh, that's nice. Isn't it? It's funny with chocolate. Well, I mean, it does. You probably tell me it releases the endorphins, is it, or is it oxytocin? And it's actually good for mood. And but it's funny how it's attached a lot to memory. Like when you say Kit Kat there, that actually reminds you of going to League of Ireland soccer games back in Ireland when I was younger with my granddad and my dad. And there used to be these lovely old ladies outside all the grounds, and they used to say, 3 chocolate bars, you know, 3 for £1. Get your Kit Kat, like in the most Dublin accent ever. And then that was just something that always stuck in the back of my mind, you know, 3 Kit Kats for £1, you know. But today I've actually got another one, which is a bit of an Irish treat. Show it to the camera here, which is the snack bar. Did you have them in Glasgow?
I don't.
Cadbury's snack.
They don't ring a bell. They in the snack bars. That must have been the estate chocolate.
Yeah, this was made in flat number 16, I think. Well, this I was gonna say this one's actually made. Well, it says Birmingham, but there was a Cadbury's chocolate factory in Dublin in Coolock, and we used to go there as kids. Like in school, they go, "Oh, if you're good, you'll go to the chocolate factory," and these snack bars are just unreal. And it's one of those chocolates where it's a bit like, what's in it?
What's inside it?
Here, let me take a bite. There's a bit of biscuit.
You
remember a club milk?
Right, okay.
You know club milks? Do you have them?
I've had a club. I don't know what a club milk is.
Yeah, like a club. Yeah. It's pretty similar to that. So biscuit encased in chocolate, but you can nibble the side of it.
That's not bad.
Which is what I do.
I'm not a fan of that word nibble. It's just something where that word nibble, it just keeps me out.
Are you getting thoughts of me flying?
Are you dunking in your chocolate? Are you dunking your tea, sorry?
Of course I am. You got it done. Oh.
Are you drinking tea? Are you drinking tea or coffee?
I'm a tea man. Barry's tea. Not yours, Gary. Barry's.
Baza? Barry's a terrible name, let's be honest.
That's my brother's name.
It's terrible, Barry. Gary's pretty shite as well, but Barry's terrible.
Barry's my brother's name.
Sorry, Baza.
Oh, we've just lost our only podcast listener, Barry.
It's lots of fun. We were massive in Barry's. That was our biggest. We had like 13 Instagram followers, all called Barry.
Sorry, Baz.
We've all fucked off.
I love you, Barry. Actually, Barry's, there's a good story about Barry's tea. There's a bit of a feud back in Ireland between Barry's and Lion's tea. And Barry's brought out this campaign years ago, which was, you know, you could get the box of tea changed to your own name. So you could get it, you know, Neil's tea or whatever. And then, of course, famously, Coca-Cola robbed that idea when they did all the personalized cans. So Barry's tea, head of the game, innovators in the tea world.
But I'm pretty conscious like chewing this biscuit on top of my microphone. I feel it's like one of those, what's those mad creepy fetishes people have got now with a chewing?
I know it's hard enough to understand your Scottish accent alone. Never mind when you're eating a bit of chocolate.
I don't know if you can talk, Neil. Your accent's not much easier.
Neil, come on.
Yes, Nick. Get into him.
How are you both?
We're good.
Good, mate. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good.
Nice to meet you.
You too. You in a gym somewhere?
Yeah, I'm a strength and conditioning coach, mate. So this is my currently my office.
Nice. Not bad.
Gary.
That's all right, mate.
He eats there. He sleeps there. I think he proposed there, and maybe his firstborn child is going to come from there.
As mate, aye.
It's a healthy space, healthy spot to spend your days.
Yeah, he's going to be called Trap Bar or you know, Dumbbell. Well, as you probably guessed, Nick, we don't really take this podcast too seriously.
Yeah, nice. How many have you done now?
You're number 3.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, and it's been pretty good. Like
the
third one. Yeah. But we're trying to get a real mix of people, you know. So, thanks for coming on today yourself as the kind of, you know, the charity representative. But we did a pilot just, you know, with Gary and I chatting the breeze about why we felt it was necessary to do the podcast, and then we spoke to Rory Warnock. Who's a breathwork specialist who you might know.
Yeah, caught up with him the other day, actually.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guy and he's doing a lot of great work. And the kind of practice, or well, he doesn't call it a practice actually. What did he call it, Gary? Training, is it? Or
I think it's training.
Training, yeah. The training that he does, like, is actually really kind of front in mind and present right now because people are struggling a bit with all the lockdown situations. So. But we're going to go on to speak to psychologists next week. We have Mary from the Indigo Project. And so we really want to cover the whole spectrum, you know, whether it's professionals working in the space directly or people who've suffered, sports stars, you know, you name it. We're going to go through the list. We have a former Welsh rugby player, Ben Evans, who's, you know, confirmed for a few weeks' time as well. So he's like a big cuddly bear. Hello, Ben. So that should be a bit of fun. But we're just trying to make, you know, light of the situation, really. And I suppose that's why you guys came to mind, you know, with batyr, because you take a very positive approach to it. So
yeah, nice.
Yeah,
it sounds like a good message, important message. And I think you're right. Like, it's a serious issue, but I think because it's a serious issue, it's been something people have been scared to talk about, which has just added to the problem. So I think you know, flipping it a little bit, having a bit of fun with it and being real, I think is a really important thing. And like you said, it's, you know, part of the way that we go about it as well. So I love it. I was happy to be involved. It's good.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on, mate.
No, we're good.
Mate, we're just, so I don't know if Neil mentioned it, but every week we've been trying to do something. We just started actually, like today we're doing chocolate. Pretty much all the little connotations that things that maybe de-stresses or we enjoy doing or always have good feelings days. So Neil loves chocolate. I like chocolate. So today we brought a wee chocolate bar on. We might do whiskey. We might do packs of crisps or whatever it may be moving forward. But I brought a Kit Kat Chunky on because obviously they're different class, but also my granny used to always give them, and it always just reminds me of good memories. Neil's got some crap bar from the estate in Ireland. I don't know what it is, from an ice cream van or something. And then what's your favourite chocolate bar, mate? I know it's random, but do you like chocolate?
Yeah, I don't mind chocolate. Yeah, I don't mind a Kit Kat. I've got Vegemite on toast at the moment for breakfast with a bit of cream cheese. That goes all right as well. But yeah,
how'd you tell someone you're Australian without telling them you're Australian?
Yeah, exactly. With these two accents, it gives it away a bit as well. Yeah, no, Kit Kat's probably my go-to.
Is this true? Actually, you might be able to quash this rumor or not. But when I came to Australia, my first housemate, who was an Aussie from Melbourne, hello Liam, he told me that the Commonwealth Bank logo, which was the yellow square with a little bit of black on the corner, he said that was inspired by toast with Vegemite on it. Is that true, or is he?
I don't know, but I'd love if that's true.
That's just it's true, mate. That's it.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. Don't ruin my dream.
Sponsored by Commonwealth. That's the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Commonwealth, if you do want to sponsor the show, you're more than welcome. Please get in touch.
It'll all be factual information about CommBank moving forward.
Yeah, a great way to invest your money. You know, they've got an app. That's just a great thing. So, Nic, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on here. The first thing we like to do with some of our guests to come on the show is a little bit of a check-in. So, yeah, tell us how you are. How's your week been? You know, any gossip?
any gossip?
All right, yeah, I'll give the inside scoop. No, well, thanks for having me, lads. Good to be on the podcast. I'm doing pretty well. I mean, it's been a while, a couple of years actually, but I'm not doing too bad. I got down to the water this morning, did a little workout, jumped in and froze. But that's always a nice way to start the day. So I'm feeling pretty fresh at the moment.
And where are you based?
Surfing?
Was that sorry?
You surfing or swimming?
Oh, it was just a dip, just jump in, jump out. Yeah, and I didn't get a surf, unfortunately.
And whereabouts are you, Nic, right now for the listeners? You're in Sydney, right?
I'm in Sydney, yeah, North Shore of Sydney. I've moved away from you, Neil. It wasn't your fault, but I'm not over that side anymore. Sorry. You
were in the Bondi Massive, way.
Exactly. I wasn't far from there,
yeah. And you're sporting a little bit of a COVID beard there, is it? The old lockdown has been keeping you warm?
Been working very hard at this beard, and it's coming along very nicely. Thank you for noticing.
Looking suave, mate.
Thank you.
Suave.
Appreciate it.
And it's interesting, you mentioned like the last few years, which is now it's getting to that point, right? Where we're like, it's not even like, oh yeah, you know, this lockdown, I've been fine. How have you been finding it even personally yourself? I suppose for Sydney, it's lockdown 2.0. For some others, let's say in Melbourne, I think it's 6.0 at this point.
Yeah.
But how have you found this lockdown this year compared to last year?
Yeah, this year's been harder for sure. I think, and I mean, you know, me personally versus work, I think we'll talk about the charity stuff in a bit, but you know, personally, I think like everyone, last year was kind of unique. We were all kind of in it together. It was, you know, trying to innovate, do things differently at work. Everyone was kind of pretty passionate about like doing our bit. We are in the mental health, work in the mental health space. So, you know, we felt like there was a role for us to play and everyone's really motivated. And by the end of the year, we were all pretty wrecked. This time came around and yeah, it's just, I think everyone's feeling the pinch of it, pretty tired. You know, we've worked really hard to try and make our way through it. And so it's a little bit more about self-preservation at this point, I think, and just kind of riding it out, which is, yeah, it's a bit different to last year for sure.
And for anyone that doesn't know you, you're the CEO of Batyr, but maybe you might just explain, you know, who Batyr are, what's the work you kind of do. That would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So Batyr is a youth mental health charity. We run education programs in schools and unis to reduce the stigma around mental health and encourage help seeking. We also train young people to learn how to manage their mental health every day. And it's just about normalizing the conversation around mental health, making it not something that is taboo or something to be scared of, but something we can all just sort of talk about when we need to, or notice when someone around us is doing it tough. And so we do that by training people to share their stories. So we train 18 to 30-year-olds to learn how to share their lived experience of mental ill health and then take them back into schools and unis and run sort of these high energy, fun, positive, engaging programs where throughout the program, there's these opportunities for these young people to share their stories. And it's just a super powerful way to have what's traditionally been a clinical or medicalized kind of conversation in just a really authentic and real way. So yeah, it's been awesome. I've been there about 6.5 years and been the CEO for nearly 2 years now. So it's been an amazing organization to be part of.
And why did batyr start? Would you have to tell us, like, what drove it? Like, what was involved in that? Was there a particular incident or a scenario that, forced the creation of the business?
Yeah, so a guy named Seb Robertson is the founder of batyr. We just had our 10th birthday, so about 10 years ago, he kicked off the organization. He was a young guy from the North Shore of Sydney, which is a relatively well-off part of the country. He had a good family, good friends, and made his way after high school down to university, ANU, in our capital in Canberra, and he studied finance down there. And he was a really well-known guy. Played rugby. You'd seen him at all the parties. He, was well liked, well known by faculty and students. Sporty guy. He was the president of the college down there. So, you picture that kind of a person and the sort of charisma that someone like that would have. But he, describes the times that he'd go back to his dorm room very differently to that. He was going through some really dark and difficult times on his own, and felt like there was, not really many options available to him. And he tried to take his life on a few occasions in one particular year. And no one knew. He thought he shouldn't be feeling like this. And since then we've heard, so many stories that have a very similar kind of feeling that he was having, which was, I shouldn't be feeling like this. I've got friends, I've got family, I'm doing well. Other people got it harder than me. I don't want to be a burden on, all of those sorts of things that go through our heads. And eventually someone reached out to him and made him get support, or helped him get support. But at the university he was at, he really struggled to access the services that were available there, because they were near the gym, and he was worried his mates at the gym were going to see him go to the counsellor, and he was worried about that. And then in the session, he was worried about leaving the counselling service. He ended up getting support off campus, and started his way on learning how to manage his mental health and looking after himself. And he went on to work in finance for a bit at GE, and reflected back on his story and felt like if someone like him just had have told him that they were going through something similar, and looked like him and sounded like him, that he might have realized, oh, okay, well, maybe there are others going through this, and maybe there is a way I can get support. And so he started sharing his story, and it all went from there. Pulled other people along on the journey, and started with his one story, and we've now got 1,000 people that have gone through that program, and we've nearly reached 300,000 young people through our face-to-face programs at schools and unis. So pretty amazing sort of journey, all off the back of this one person being willing to kind of speak up.
Well, that's a great point, because this is only episode 3, but we've had the same conversation on every show from a different angle, that there is power in one movement, one small change, no matter what that is. And Seb, if you're listening, credit to you, because if you hadn't have, taken those steps, we wouldn't be speaking to you today, Nic, so that just shows, and to hear those statistics of who batyr has reached is just phenomenal. So congratulations to him and to you and all the team for all that amazing work. But just fantastic to hear that you can really make a change. And also, one thing that came to mind there was that, that facade of being happy and being gregarious and being fun, and then people not knowing what's really going on behind closed doors. And yesterday was Are You Okay Day, which is a fantastic day in terms of raising awareness. But quite often with someone who is struggling, if you ask them on the street, how are you going, they'll normally say, yeah, I'm fine, So what, from my point of view, I think one thing that we can go a little bit further on things like Are You Okay Day is like try and push that a little bit more, to try and, peel back the layers of the onion a bit more, because sometimes it's not as easy to come forward as you said.
For sure.
It's funny you should say that, Sully. Every time I used to answer the phone, my business, I'd answer the phone and be like, I used to hate saying hi, how you doing? Because the response would always be a good thanks you. So then I said to her, when I get Leon, who you know, I was like, I'm just going to say hi, how can I help you? I'd be like, hi, how can I help you? They'd be like, good thanks you.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but people greet greetings with another greeting. Yeah. How are you? Yeah. How are you? Yeah.
It's just programmed just to say, yeah, good. As if like, just get past this point and then we'll talk about what I'm actually here for.
It's all very automatic, isn't it? The actual Are You Okay yesterday, the campaign yesterday was about asking, are you really okay? So they sort of switched it up a little bit because at the moment, not everyone's sort of struggling a little bit. And so the answer probably is, yeah, we're good at the start. But yeah, we definitely need to dig a little deeper than that and just keep an eye on each other for sure.
Yeah, and if you think like one thing, like COVID, like any scenario, even though it's been, there's been a lot of negatives or bad things about it, but quite often there's positives that come from every story. And although everybody is going through, well, the vast majority of us are going through hard times, be it financially, jobs, and so on, which obviously is not great. Maybe what it has done has given mental health as a topic a little bit more of a platform, because it was a little bit like the working from home situation. 2 years ago, some companies who are like forward thinkers would have, the working from home policy. But quite often, if you were like working from home, people would say, he's just taking the piss. He's at home. He's in the gym, or he's on the beach or whatever. Or he's sick again on a Monday. Yeah. And maybe it's a little bit like that with mental health, that like before, there's different types of, mental health. And even if you think of depression, there's like circumstantial stuff. So, grieving, or you lose a job, you might go into a period for a set, amount of time. Whereas now I think everybody's had a feeling of what it really feels to have their lives greatly impacted, which hopefully has been good for mental health as a topic. Would you agree with that? Or has anything changed in the last 18 months to 2 years with the work you guys do at batyr?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're definitely talking about it more, which is great. I think we've seen a shift in what we would call public stigma in that, like, I think we're probably a little bit better at being willing to ask people if they're okay and keeping an eye out for this sort of stuff and being aware of it. I think sometimes people are still a little bit nervous to have that conversation in case someone says no, and not everyone really knows exactly what to do. Although, sometimes just listening or being there is all you really need to do. But I think where we've got a long way to go is around self-stigma. I think there's still, for those people that are struggling, I think we're better at asking, are you okay? But still really struggle to say, I'm not okay. And to sort of lead with that. And so that's where we're putting a lot of our attention, is how do we sort of shift the internal mindset around how people feel about themselves and about mental health more broadly. So yeah, it's been great to see that shift. And I think people are getting better understanding. The government's given it a little bit more attention too, which is good. There's a lot of work that needs to happen on creating a system that helps not just the kind of more prevalent mental health issues, but some of the more complex ones as well. So I think we're heading in the right direction, but long way to go. I mean, we've seen presentations to emergency departments for self-harm and suicidal ideation go up by 30% here in this state, and up by 50% down in Victoria. We still have 3,000 deaths by suicide a year here, and for our population, that's really significant. And 65,000 people attempt to take their life each year. So still a huge problem, but I think we're heading in the right direction culturally around how we're talking about it and how we want to be there for each other, which is good.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Nick, regarding batyr was, I work with a lot of youth athletes, right? And probably in the last 4 months in particular, with schools being and stuff like that, it's the first time kids have been pretty comfortable just telling me how they feel.
Yeah.
I've never actually seen it firsthand, how damaging it's been psychologically to them. And they've been very open with me, which is good. I've got that relationship, but it's been quite impactful. And it's one of the reasons why I started to reach out to Neil to start this podcast, was like, these kids are struggling, like proper struggling. So what I'd be interested in from batyr side of thing is, like, I looked at, like, for instance, your motto of like giving a voice to the elephant in the room, which I think is quality. And I see that in your logo, the elephant, as well. And also the mission of the goal for young people to reach out for positive conversations. But what does success look like for batyr? Like, how do you finish a year or the month and be like, that's been successful?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because as a charity, and like any charity, your biggest success is when you don't need to exist anymore, because you're trying to solve a problem that exists that you want to go away. But it's a systemic problem, right? It's a big one, and we're not going to solve it on our own. So for us, our mission is about reaching as many young people as we can and sharing as many of these stories as we can. We have some measurements around attitudes towards help seeking and reductions in stigma, and those sorts of things that we track and measure. And so we want to see that our programs are maintaining some of those metrics. But more broadly, we just want to make sure our vision is that all young people are able to have positive conversations around mental health and access support when they need it. And so if we see a world where everyone just feels like they can put their hand up and go, I'm struggling at the moment, and then have a real easy pathway to get support for that, whether that's doing it themselves, we were talking about breath work before, or meditation, mindfulness. There's lots of strategies for managing our mental health. So it might be something they can do themselves, or it might be reaching out to someone, having conversation, or getting professional support. So that's the world we want to see. And I think we can get there. It might just take a little bit longer.
So what would that look like to you, Nic? Because, there's the Black Dog Institute, there's Beyond Blue, there's many charities now. Do you think that's part good and part bad in terms of like there is so many institutions and bodies working themselves? Like, would you see it as, charities combining to one place in the future where it's all part of the one system, or what do you think there?
Yes, I think when it comes to accessing support for services, we need to streamline a lot of that. So, and I know some of those national organizations are working on that. So Lifeline, Beyond Blue, those sorts of charities are trying to work out how there can be one place to go, and then you sort of get triaged to the different options available based on your needs. So I think coming together in that way is really important. But at the same time, all of those organizations have very different strengths and very different focuses. And so, we go into schools and we work with young people. Beyond Blue don't really do that, but they have great resources and support services online and through phone now. Black Dog, a great research body, huge amount of evidence behind the work they're doing. They're going to sort of change the way that we understand how to support people with mental health issues. So I think all coming together in some ways is a good idea. In other ways, it sort of dilutes what you're great at. But it is complicated, and for us, there's a lot of organisations that work in schools, and so we're trying to work with them on how to make that a bit of an easier process for schools, because it can be a bit complicated. So a bit of both, I'd say.
Yeah, maybe some point in the future there might be a UN where all the charities come together into one headquarters. Well, you mentioned batyr and working with the youth, which is a fascinating angle of it, but if you could maybe explain why do you work specifically with the youth? What's the impact there versus, everyday Australians?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a problem that we all face. So it's not about, this is just a young person's problem, but couple of reasons. One is that about 75% of mental health issues present before the age of 25. So, we know that working with young people and developing these skills on how to manage your mental health and how to identify signs and symptoms of mental ill health and things is really critical to catch early. Because if you develop good strategies and you develop good techniques and tools in managing that, then you can tackle it early and sort of get on top of it for most people. So that's really critical, but it is a really significant issue for young people as well. So suicide's the leading cause of death for 15 to 44-year-olds. There's nothing else that takes more lives than suicide in that demographic. And so it is, for me, I feel like it's one of the biggest social issues we're trying to face for young people. And so, that getting in early and tackling a group that's really struggling is really important. Adolescence is a time of change and transition, between primary school and high school to university or off into the workforce or whatever. There's big transition times, moving out of home, finding new friends. So I think it can be a bit of a tumultuous time. And so I think that feeds into it as well.
And Gary,
with that, sorry, Sully. I just wanted to ask, is there some sort of common themes that you see with younger people, of like the common things that they seem to all have the same? Like, common thing for older people might be the workplace work stressing them out and it's sort of getting to them. Is there anything common with the younger ones?
Yeah, I mean, there's similar, similar things around pressure and stress. I think we don't do the best job at kind of helping young people just enjoy the early stages of their life. I think they feel like the rest of their life depends on those, few years in high school, which I don't think helps. But anxiety and depression are some of the most common mental health issues for that demographic. But that's kind of true throughout the lifespan. So I think the ability to respond to life's challenges when you haven't had to before is part of the issue too. It's the first time you're trying to face some of the things that you haven't had to in the past. Whereas I think as people get a bit older, they're able to develop some of those skills and techniques. But like I said, what
about social status? Is that a big thing for the youth? If you think of, let's say, our generation, it wasn't really as much of a, everyone wants to be the cool kid kind of thing. That's probably transitions through most generations. But in terms of social media, looking at stars, like haircuts, do you think that's one of the kind of issues that's brought on a lot of that, emotional discomfort in under 18-year-olds?
Yeah, I think technology plays a role. We talk a lot about the positive role that social media and technology can play in people's lives if you use it in the right way, but it definitely has had a negative impact, around things like eating disorders, bullying, the fact that young people can't escape for any period of time. They're constantly switched on because they're constantly, online. I mean, that's, stereotyping, but social media and devices are a part of young people's life now. It's not like an attachment, like a separate thing. It's just a part of who they are. And so, to be scrolling online late at night, and if you're being bullied at school and you're still being bullied at home, you just can't escape it. So that's been a really big problem. And something we talk about, healthy habits around using technology. And
I was going to ask, do you guys provide any advice, particularly even to parents, on how to deal with their son or daughter being bullied?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the amount of time you spend on social media and stuff is one thing that we talk about. The thing that I would say though is teenagers aren't great at doing what they're asked. So sometimes I think parents think the best thing to do is take the device, at 7 o'clock, can't use it. It may work, but it doesn't. I don't think you necessarily learn anything from that. So I think it's about conversations around why that could be helpful, and then also modeling. We actually there's some research that came out recently that says that parents actually spend more time overnight on their phone than their children, and so I think modeling.
You're laughing, silly. Definitely, mate.
What are they doing? Are they trying to do TikTok videos or?
Yeah, no, they're scrolling through Facebook and.
I'll say that, mate. They're looking at your Instagram, mate. You're their hero. Big silly.
Okay. Well, I mean that's definitely true for adults.
No,
sure.
It's they're filming themselves cooking.
Lockdown makes us do crazy things, alter egos of different genders, but that's okay. We live in an acceptable world. But I think that is true for adults as well, right? Because Gary and I spoke about this before about, you think you're doing great and like so many things going well in your life, like the Seb scenario that you mentioned. And then you go on, you're in bed maybe, and you just flicking through Instagram, and then you see someone's got a new car or something. And you're like, that wanker's got that car. And then you get this little, little kind of
mate,
shock.
Fucking hell.
But you know what I mean? You're comparing yourself to others around you constantly, right? And that's a big issue.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. And our brain, there's the concept of brain plasticity where we actually can train negative pathways within our brain to constantly be comparing and constantly be having negative thoughts around who we are and our bodies, and so there are some important strategies around. The good thing about plasticity is that you can retrain some of that stuff, and so we talk about gratitude journaling, and you know, therapies like CBT, where you sort of train yourself to let thoughts come and go. So like there are lots of strategies to work through some of that stuff, but it's been in our face all the time. It has been in advertising forever, but at the moment, you know, you don't escape advertising anymore. It's constantly being thrown at you on your phones, on telly, when you walk down the street. So it's a challenge, but it's something we've got to live with. It's not going away.
And CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
What are some strategies, mate? You mentioned strategies, like obviously the strategy you guys use, you can go as much detail as you like, but what are some strategies for younger kids in particular? I mean, any age level, just teenagers or even younger. What are things that you'd recommend? I'm sure maybe the parents are listening that they could recommend.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can see you're in the gym, Gary. Exercise is super important one, a great one. So I guess it depends on like what severity of your mental illness. So on the mild end, you know, feeling anxious or stressed or pressure, or feeling a bit down, exercise can be like a natural high, which is really great. Routine at the moment is really critical to sort of take some control over your day and how you're spending your time. Healthy diet, sleep, like all these sort of classic things are more important than we give credit to. And one culprit that my food intake's not great, my sleep's not great. So 2 areas for me to work on.
Vegemite.
Vegemite, it's not great. Things like mindfulness, and not necessarily having to be like kumbaya kind of, not that that's bad, but
we've just lost a few more listeners.
Sorry. I love that. But it doesn't have to be that complicated, you know, like the Headspace app or the Calm app, the Smiling Mind app that just sort of walk you through a self-guided mindfulness session just helps us stop and slow down. Like we're so fast paced, constantly thinking, constantly like being activated. And I think just that slowing down is really important. Going for a walk, hanging out with your dog, like spending time connecting with friends and family. It all sounds super simple, but they're all things that really easily, slowly just slip away. And especially if you're feeling down, you drop off all of those things. And so as you start to get, if it is a bit more severe, then, you know, professional support will talk you through some strategies, more formal strategies around things you can do to manage depression, anxiety, and other more complex mental health issues like CBT.
It's interesting you mentioned exercise, mate, because a lot of players I'll get here, say usually 12 to 18, who come in for your footballers, and their parents obviously have got ambitions, and the kids get ambitions as well. And it's all about like, I want to get faster, stronger, more explosive, blah, blah, blah. But like these kids, some kids are 12 or 13 years old, you know. So for me, it's like they're probably they're going through a growth spurt. They're probably scared to take their t-shirt off, maybe in PE class. They've got all those growing. If I can get them feeling strong, that value of that is worth its weight in gold. And you know yourself, things like push-ups and chin-ups are very easy to measure. It's like I done 6 yesterday and I done 8 next week, and you start to get that growth mindset from how it's going. And it's funny because I'll get a kid in here right for this first session, and the next week he'll come in and I'm like, oh, how are you feeling, mate? What's happening? How you doing? I'm like joking, oh, you look massive, mate, even at the gym, like joking with them. They've got this little swagger about them, and then they're like, yeah, I felt so much stronger on the ball at the weekend. Like they had one session gym, but like that is worth its weight. Obviously it's not actually happening, but you know what? It's almost a placebo that is so powerful that they're stepping on that pitch feeling I've done something. I feel amazing, and they feel like they're getting ahead and progressing. And I think it's the gateway to a growth mindset. And I try and tell that to everyone I speak to. I'm like, I'm not saying your kid's going to be a professional athlete or anything of the sort, but these are habits, like you said, simple habits that are forming for the rest of their life. And psychologically, it's where the biggest benefits going to come from. So when they feel, and you know, Sully knows how much benefit comes from not just exercising, but the progression of exercise, of improving from last year. It's massive.
There's so much positive. Yeah, I kind of mentioned that dopamine hit or whatever, or endorphins, but yeah, there's so many benefits to it. The confidence you can get out of it, the community that's there, like you hanging out with your friends, the confidence that you build. Like, yeah, there's a huge amount to it. And I think we also have to be careful with exercise as well, though. You know, if you start looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, oh, I need a little bit more muscle on that shoulder, like you know, you can go down a slippery slope that way too. So, I mean, it's all just about
balance, really,
balancing it out. And just like you talked about growth mindset, it's about trying to positively focus on this stuff. You know, when we talk about food, we talk about sometimes food rather than bad or good food, because again, it's like you can sort of go down a road of being like, I'm only eating good food, and then you can start to develop some challenges around that, rather than it just being about balance and about kind of enjoying life and enjoying what life has to bring, without being too hard on yourself or too tight on stuff.
Yeah, we've spoken about that, Nick, already on the show, about the the yin and yang, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, like the opposites to each other. Like you need that little bit of balance, and we've spoken about the burger, and like sometimes you need to just have a burger, and that's okay too. And but like one of the things, Gary, you mentioned with the youth, I think like probably one of the good things about the next generation is hopefully they do respond, I think, better to like words of affirmation, versus like I remember growing up, it was like the hard knock school of like, you must do better, that's not good enough, like go harder and go harder, which not to say like there's everything is wrong around that situation either, but like, and then drawing back, I suppose, to batyr with under 18s, like it is kind of encouraging to hear, and that statistic that you mentioned, that like it's kind of alarming, but also in a good way, and particularly reinforces the work that you guys are doing. Like if 75% of mental health conditions are manifesting before the age of 18, it's fucking so important that we are out there speaking to the next gen kids, because they're the ones that are going to be living their lives, right? Like I know we probably can't measure right now, but do you think in 15, 20 years time, we're just going to have a far more emotionally aware and open society?
Yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it? Like, I think to your point about, manning up as well, like which I got growing up too. And I think that, like you said, that's sometimes important, right? Like you just need to get up, get at it. Like that starting sometimes is the right approach, but everyone's different. We're not all the same. And so sometimes that doesn't work, and sometimes that's not the right advice. And I think we've just got to be a bit better at playing the person, rather than assuming large concepts just work for everyone just because we're a man or woman or whatever. And so I think, I think the way that we're talking about individuality is really important. How we're accepting of different people and individuals, I think, is a really good direction. All will help where we need to get to, because a lot of the more minority groups like are higher risk. So if the LGBTIQA plus group community, they're much higher risk around mental health issues and suicide. We know regional, rural young people have twice as likely to die by suicide than in metro areas. Similar to with Aboriginal Indigenous young people. So I think the more we kind of just come together as a community, accept people and support people, the better and healthier we'll be, because people will feel less alone, less separated from society. And I think we've all seen kind of some good progress in that on the most part.
And thinking of the landscape, as you've kind of delved into a little bit there, like obviously COVID has probably impacted that a lot, but can you give us a bit of an insight into like funding, working through the government, like how you guys can operate? Like, has that been really challenged over the last few years? Because now a lot of businesses have been impacted. Like, how's that affected you, and has it affected you rolling out your services to some of those marginal groups as well?
Yeah, it has, which has been really hard because it's, if I'm honest with you, it's stressful. It's stressful to be trying to run an organization and support the team and support the work that we do, and know that, we're kind of just trying to make it through month by month financially. So yeah, fundraisers have been really difficult. We can't run our normal fundraising events, which are a big part of how we operate. We have a fee for service model where schools and universities will pay a little bit, and we subsidize the rest through other sources of giving. So that's kind of slowed up a lot. And we haven't really gotten as much support from government as would be helpful. So that all of those things, make it really hard. But we have a diverse kind of funding stream. We've got amazing, generous donors. We've got people still trying to run online events for us. We've got philanthropists and some corporate support. And we do have a little bit of government funding. So we're chipping along okay. It's difficult when we're in a time when we're needed more than ever, and we're kind of having to wind back rather than ramp up. So it's frustrating kind of on that front as well. We've had to reduce some hours with the team and all of that kind of thing that everyone's doing to try and make their way through. But it's been tough.
Well, hopefully, if Scott Morrison is listening,
yeah,
he's he followed us on Instagram. He just followed us on Instagram last night, mate. He DM'd you.
Good. Good. Put in a good word for us.
I
will. But mate, again, one thing I think from every podcast that we do is anyone listening, whatever age, I'd always like them to leave with some sort of practical sort of advice or whatever. Obviously, the main practical thing from this would be if they know someone or have someone in their life who's a young person experienced this situation, and get in touch with yourselves, and you can explain that soon on how to do that. But in terms of at home or at school or etc., what are some like low-hanging fruits that people could do very easily that you've seen are really powerful?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned some of the strategies, but some of those things, it's kind of hard to know where to start. Like, you start exercising, you're like, well, that means something different for everyone, or mindfulness, download the app might be the first step, but like, how do I start? So maybe my advice or like takeaway thought would be around, it was mentioned before, like this idea of micro moves create macro change. And I think that's true for this problem as an issue, but it's true for like our everyday lives. So there's also an idea around toward moves and away moves. And when I've been in really low times, the thing that's helped me the most is like, if you're laying in bed and you're like, I don't feel like getting up and doing the day, I don't want to go to work and I don't want to exercise and whatever else, I'm feeling really flat. A toward move might be to just get up and have a shower. That's all you think about. Like, I'm just going to get up and have a shower. But an away move might be to roll over and go back to sleep. Or it may be that you do need to sleep, and that's fine too. But I think it's about like thinking through, what decision do I need to make here? That's just a little toward move, a little micro change that just takes me a little bit in the right direction. And sometimes that can create momentum and get us on our way to some of that macro change that we want to see. So, I mean, you'd speak about it a lot, Gary, about like progressive or progressing through exercise and through your weights. You don't pick up a bench press and smash out 200 kilos straight away. You start with the bar, you put on 5 kilos, you work up to 10, and you make your way up. And I think that's the case for kind of all of our lives in everything that we do. Just chip away at it. Don't be so hard on yourself. You'll get there. Just work on those little micro changes, those toward moves. In those little moments, make those little decisions that will just take you one tiny little step in the right direction.
I think Nick must have seen our Instagram, Gary, did he? Because we have one of our quotes, don't be so hard on yourself. So
there you go.
No, I always say to, I often say to kids is like a lot's better than a little. Basically just doing a little bit often is going to be far more beneficial to you. And try to do like one big mindfulness session or one big transformational exercise session in that one day, or same as consistency beats intensity. These like phrases, but there's so many of these phrases because they are so simple, and it's the same message. Like success leaves clues, or these are the same things that are getting said all the time because that's what creates change, like you said.
Yeah,
I think that is super important. But again, the difficulty I think with that, and my experience with that age level is, and yourself being at that age, is it can easily go one in one ear and out the other. Because it's like, oh mate, just got up and have a shower. No worries, mate. TikTok video, here we go. I'll go watch a football highlights or whatever it may be. It's so easy just to jump on the PlayStation and do whatever, rather than be like, okay, I need to take that positive change. That's where I see an obstacle.
That's why you need good people around you, right? Like your mates are going to be the biggest influences on your life for sure. They say you're the average of the 5 closest people you spend time with. And I think that's so true. And I think, part of our model is having young people speak to young people, because I don't know how to speak to young people anymore. But they know what's going on, and they have the conversation, and they can be real and authentic, and it means something. Whereas if we are always coming in just saying, you need to look after yourself and like do this and do that, like, they don't give a shit about that.
No bother, mate. Thumbs up.
Exactly.
No worries.
Yeah, good on you. Yeah, I'll do that.
But it was funny. Yesterday I went in to see my chiro, and her son, she was saying, like, obviously this is working, Nick, because I think he's like 8 or 9 years of age, and he was really sad. And she was like, "Oh, how is everything okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just feeling a bit sad today, because." And I think he mentioned something, and she was like, "Wow, isn't that amazing that she has a young son who's able to tell her that he's just feeling sad today, and it's just he's just not having a fun day." And thinking of that progression versus to, let's say, us as kids, like, we wouldn't have said that. Imagine your mum going, "You all right?" You'd be like, "Fuck off, mum." Like you wouldn't say it.
Yeah. No. And if we did, a parent would say, "Well, go outside and play."
I don't want to know.
Get my sight.
Exactly.
Here's the Game Boy. Just back up. And like, would you have any advice for parents? And I've got a follow-up question to this, but like, is there any signs, like, any advice for parents to, like, signs around what, with their son or daughter, like, around maybe that they might be struggling with something?
Yeah. So it's an anxious time for parents at the moment. They're seeing in schools and people's friends and stuff that young people are really struggling. So the first thing I would say is, like, look after yourself too. And there's only so much you can do as a parent and as a person to, like, support the people that you love. And the best thing you can do is, put your own oxygen mask on. But in terms of signs and symptoms, it's hard in adolescence because they change quite quickly. But one of the things that we would say is, if you notice a significant change in behavior or attitude over an extended period of time, so maybe 2 weeks, if they're normally, like, quite a sociable, outgoing person, and then they're sort of isolating in the room for a couple of weeks, or vice versa, they're normally isolating in the room, and now they're kind of, like, out, just, like, huge amount of energy, like, just going wild, or even, not that dramatic, then that's worth kind of just having a conversation with them about. But because that's sort of a shift, and that's not like a one-off. It's not unusual for a young person to tell their parents to F off or whatever. But if it's ongoing, that's a bit of a concern. So that would be something to keep an eye on. But one of the things that we've heard in young people's stories, and this is always my encouragement to parents, because I don't think they realize the best thing that they can do is just be there. And there's sometimes not much more you can do that. Be there by their side and help them just make their way through the period, because it will end. It's not always the case, but it is for majority. And so a lot of people's stories, we did a research project recently, and we looked at 100 stories to try and identify themes in protective factors for young people that have navigated mental ill health. Something like 97% of them had what they called what we dubbed an anchor person. So someone in their life, through the real troughs, real lows, through the ups and downs, there was someone there just consistent with them. That was an anchor. That was just the rock that they could hold on to through the ups and downs. And that anchor, no doubt, for most of them, wouldn't have felt like they were doing anything, wouldn't have felt like they were adding any value in those moments. But when they get through it and they look back, they go, that was the thing. It was a consistent person that I knew was there. Even though I didn't want to talk to them, even though I didn't want to, told them I didn't want them to be there, it was them being there. And so my encouragement often for parents is just be that anchor person, be that consistent person. It's hard, but hang in there, because things change.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a brilliant bit of advice, I think, to anyone, especially parents. And I think, quite often, I was going to say giving parents advice, even though we're not parents, but yeah. I can imagine as a parent, you would want to just try and solve that problem for your children, and you probably think you're doing a lot of good, but as you were saying, quite often the best thing to do is just to listen. And I think that anchor analogy is a brilliant way of putting that into action. It's
relevant for all of us, right? Like, whether it's for our parents or it's our colleagues or our friends or our spouse, like it doesn't matter. We can be that person for the people in our lives. And I think it's one of the best things that we can do. I always get, obviously working in this space, people always call me or text me and say, like, I'm really worried about my friend, and like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I don't know what else to do. Like, I'm not doing enough. And I'm like, you probably are. Like, at this point, that's probably all you can do. Be there, be a great friend, tell them you love them, tell them they'll get through, like, encourage them to get up and exercise, like, encourage them and be there with them. But if they don't feel like it, just lay next to them. You know what I mean? Like, that's all we can do sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that hopefully relieves the pressure for some people, because it can be a really anxious time when you're really worried about people you love.
Well, it was good that we got our little 10-minute reminder for your next meeting. Hopefully it's a funding meeting with Scott Morrison. But just to kind of finish on a few points, the statistics is one thing that has driven us to you guys before. You've got some amazing stats that put mental health into very palatable language, you know. Can you just like bring us through, like, let's say, not just with the youth now, but in everyday Australians, like how many people are being impacted? I know you've done some great research about those who speak out about it versus those who don't. Could you give us a bit of a macro view of where we're at currently?
Yeah. So, I mean, mental ill health affects 1 in 4 Australians, and 50% of us in our lifetime. So, you know, pretty much most of us, we're either dealing with stuff at some point or someone we know is. But we also know that only 30% of people access support that need to. So there's a huge amount of people that are struggling, just dealing with it on their own, not speaking about it, not reaching out for help. And so that's the critical thing that I think we need to change. We know that we've talked about a lot of the proven strategies that can help people navigate this stuff. And so, but they need to access it. They need to have access to it. And so there's some big stuff that needs to happen at a systems level, but there's stuff that we can do every day to help shift that. And I think that's a big part of what we need to do.
And again, I think with that statistic, what that kind of drills home for me is, for anyone that's listening, is that you are not alone. Like almost everyone is facing some form of this at some scale. So if you are listening, you are not alone, and there's somebody next to you who's, may not have been open about it either, but is struggling with something as well. And there's kind of unity in that, in the sense that, like, we can help each other to kind of hopefully bring that number down. And particularly that 30% number that you mentioned there, hopefully we'll get that down to 0%. And we joke about it that, sometime in the future, you might be having your coffee and you might just say to someone, yeah, I struggle, I get anxiety or whatever. And then someone else might say, well, I'm gluten-free, hopefully they'll be on the same level.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Now, there's 2 last points, I suppose, Gary. We have the quick fire questions, and then we'd also love to just maybe ask you, for anyone that's listening, Nic, how can they get involved with batyr if they like what they've heard today? Like, can you donate? Can you volunteer? Like, what are the ways people can actually get involved?
Yeah, so, I mean, follow us on Instagram, jump on our website, batyr.com.au. It's BATYR. For those that don't know,
and it's a small B, isn't it? And can you explain the name as well for anyone?
It is a small B. The branding team tell me that that's about being a much more welcoming and attractive brand for young people, having a small B rather than a big scary capital B. But I'll take the word for it. The batyr was the name of an elephant in Kazakhstan that could speak a number of phrases in Russian, and so we're about giving a voice to the elephant in the room. And so batyr, the elephant, was the inspiration for batyr. So that's where it comes from.
It wasn't Borat's elephant, was it? That was the big B, was it?
I think it was actually an Indian elephant in Kazakhstan. So wow. I don't know if Borat got to meet batyr or not, but it'd be a good meeting.
I mean, we've just solved an advertising campaign for you right there.
Borat on an elephant, brilliant.
That's good, actually. I'll look into
it. Mate, we've just got, I know you're again conscious of time, you've only got a few minutes before your next meeting. We've got just 3 quick fire questions, 30 seconds, just to see.
I'm not a quick thinker. I did see that this was happening, so I'll see how I go.
That's super simple, mate. You'll smash
Okay,
it.
good, thanks.
Okay, so out of 1 to 10, where do you think we are currently as a world for mental health? 10 being super positive, 1 being the lower end.
Where are we generally in where we need to be?
Yeah.
Oh man, when you look globally, it's a big problem. People still can't get things like a marriage license if they've been diagnosed with a mental health issue. Like there's some serious things globally, maybe a 6.
And versus Australia, like is Australia ahead of that?
Yeah, I'd give Australia 7.5.
Go on, Australia. Come on.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell this. I knew it, man. It's that Vegemite, mate. Unbelievable positivity coming from it. What about you, Nick? So where are you on an average day out of 10, personally?
Maybe a 7.5 lately. It's been a
typical Aussie, bog standard Aussie. 7.5.
5, wouldn't it?
Half of the course. And last one, mate. If there was one thing that you would recommend people can do each day that would be the biggest bang for their buck for mental health, what would it be?
Exercise.
Exercise, superb.
Yeah. Nothing too hectic. Like, no need to turn up to the gym. Just get outside, go for a stroll.
No ultra marathons.
What's that?
No ultra marathons or triathlons or
Yeah. Well, you can if you're up to it. I'm not.
Like, there's a lot of things, mate. Just amazing. Like some of the stats I'm going to definitely be listening to this. Some of the stats are like, they're hard hitting. Some of them, it's scary, to be honest with you. It's scary, but it's also exciting that hopefully we can make a positive impact.
Yeah.
And mate, absolutely phenomenal work you guys are doing. Like, I'm so invested in the youth as well as work I do, but the stuff you do is amazing. I think it cannot be. It's so understated, and the fact you don't get funding baffles me and actually worries me. Genuinely, I think that is insane. You're not getting funding. Insane.
Well, same
So
to you guys.
Mate.
Thanks for doing this. I think making this stuff accessible and just feel a bit more real to people is critical. So you'll have great impact through pushing this out as well. So let us know if we can do anything to help.
We will. And you know what, Nick? I went to a talk as part of Vivid a couple of years ago, and there was a guy from IKEA who's head of design, and somebody asked a question from the crowd saying, I did a semester over in Sweden, or whatever, and it was like, I couldn't get over how clean and green the whole country was. Everyone recycled, kids, grandparents, and he's like, how did you do it? And his answer is like, it was simple. We educated the children on how to do it. And then the children, he said what they didn't know was the children went back and re-educated their parents like about recycling. And within literally one generation, the problem was eradicated. So if that's anything to live by, it's a credit to what you guys are doing with, the youth. And hopefully that has the same effect when it comes to mental health awareness.
Love it, mate. I love it. I think it will. I think we will. I think we're getting there.
Brilliant.
Good on
All
you.
right. Well,
superb, mate.
thank you very much.
Thanks, fellas. Good to chat.
Thanks, Nick.
See you, Nick.
Good,
Okay,
mate. Thanks
bye.
very much. Have a good day, mate.
And some of the big numbers surrounding batyr are absolutely amazing. They've reached nearly 250,000 young people with the programs that they put on. They've trained 888 young people to share their story, and they've delivered a total of 2,011 programs. Just a fantastic organization, and we're absolutely humbled to have them on the show.